We started off with introduction to schools of psychoanalysis, talked about the concept of a full school, three-quarter school, half school, quarter school. Then we talked about heat as a full school. Second session, we went into model of the mind. Third session, we went into pathogenesis. Fourth session, we went into healing. And today we will go into fifth session on heat, where we will try to explore pathogenesis and healing for a specific disorder called bipolar. And we will see how different the approach of heat is compared to the classical approach we take in psychoanalysis. So let us look at, to start with, bipolar personality disorder, classical psychoanalytic presentation. What do we find in psychoanalytic therapy of a bipolar disorder? If we do long enough, deep enough, integral enough therapy of a bipolar personality disorder, these are the things which are on the slide, which ultimately come up in any deep psychoanalytic exploration. The first thing that comes up is, not the first thing, but inevitably it comes up. It may be second or fourth or fifth, but it inevitably comes up. Early life object loss, quite common to all the 10 personality disorders enlisted in DSM-5. What does an early life object loss lead to? I have explored this subject, this point, in Valley Junction model. That what happens when object loss is perceived, and this is very important. Object loss did not happen in reality, it has to be perceived to have happened. Real object loss would mean somebody is an orphan or somebody has been abandoned by the parents in reality. Those cases are rare. Common is the parent is not available for a considerable period of time and the child deems that to be an object loss, to be an abandonment. And a sequence of event happens in the mind as the child perceives an object loss. This sequence of event I have covered in Valley Junction model. When the parent returns, part of what happened in the child's mind is reversed, but a major part remains unreversed. The consequences of that traumatic event become refractory and non-responsive to reality thereafter. So, early life object loss leading to a desperation for an object, denial of need for an object,
Yes, now it's okay, I think.
hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Denial of the need for an object, desperation for an object, feeling powerless and helpless, developing a template for catastrophic thinking, developing rage and pain, both of which are defended against, or they are deflected and projected out. I am not good enough. Good events are an exception, difficult events a rule. And in an attempt to deal with these difficult feelings, templates are developed which lead to the personality disorder. So the personality disorder is a dysfunctional solution to the difficulty of the valley state. As you want to move out of the unbearable valley state, you don't come back to normal. Rather, you jump from the valley state to a peak state. And that peak state is the state of a personality disorder. Second element, so this also leads to difficulty in object relations, which also comes up in difficulty of relating to the therapist. Second thing we find is the split is open, and this creates many things. One, the ecstasy of the split open. Two, the unbearable anxiety of the split open. Three, art of the split open. Four, the splendor and the dazzle of the splendor projected often on somebody outside because of the split open. Fifth, thinking in terms of extremes. Sixth, not being able to give up the addiction of omnipotence. Seventh, not being able
Yes, sir. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So the split remaining open creates its own difficulties where we are not able to access rage towards ambivalently cathected objects, or if the rage comes up in session, after the session there is a kind of post-session attack or post-session feeling of guilt. So either anxiety or guilt post-session is experienced. Third, the bipolarity we see keeps changing frequency. So the sinusoidal wave, the intensity and the duration both keep changing. Most of the times it is stable, we see the repetition of the same pattern, but occasionally there are micro cycles for manifestation, and these micro cycles we realize quite late in therapy. Fourth, we realize the difficulty is of inability to internalize a good, reliable, stable object. This can lead to a desperate search of an object, a manic high when a good object is found, feeling coordinated and stable and well regulated in the presence of a good person, mostly the therapist, or any person that the patient thinks is a good person, a kind person. But the physical absence of such persons results in a complete disintegration, not complete, but a substantial disintegration, lack of coordination and dysregulation inside, often experienced as mounting of anxiety, below which at times there is catastrophic thinking, at times there is rage, at times there is sadness. Occasional disintegration of the self, at times in response to a challenge, at times spontaneous, which is worse. Repressed anger towards significant others, which cannot come out because the split is open or because of guilt, or towards a suffocating ambivalence that you have love and anger towards the same person. Intense fear of significant others, at times projected on the therapist. sadness repressed related to the traumatic events, and quite an inability to bring out that sadness. Ambivalence precipitated suffocation. You can neither experience nor let go. Problems of guilt, extremely harsh and self-punishing guilt. This guilt often can create traits of, this guilt is often found when traits of OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, are seen along with bipolar personality disorder as a secondary comorbidity. So guilt in such cases is very harsh. Intense self-destruction, anger towards everyone else cannot go out, so it turns on oneself and gets into self-destruction. Self-destruction happens in various ways. It can just be depression, it can be actual self-harm, it can be destroying one's career, it can be destroying one's relationship with one's children or family members. It can be taking wrong decisions which bring destruction upon you. And very common, I am not good enough. And when you get out of I am not good enough, you go to the other extreme, I am all good. So in the depressive low, I am not good enough. In the manic high, I am all good, which people find as arrogance. So these are some of the very common elements we find in psychoanalysis of bipolar personality disorder. Any questions on this?
No, sir.
Now we know how we deal with it in classical psychoanalysis. We take often a Gaussian stance, so the person can internalize a good, reliable, stable object. We do interpretation of split. We ask the person to put the two together in various situations where the split is in operation. We talk about the problem of stability in bipolarity. We talk about self-regulation, mindfulness. We talk about releasing anger in therapy towards significant others, bring out sadness, tone down guilt to optimum levels, see the self-destruction and work upon it. In case of inferiority, we ask the person to look at evidence in reality. And with these various classical tools of psychoanalysis, we try to heal the bipolar. Now, if we look at it from vantage point of heat, right, how it would be different. If you look at the same bipolar from a vantage point of heat, the first thing we would look at would be, in heat, we look at 5 bodies, which is a very Eastern concept, that the human integer is actually a confederation of 5 bodies which are coordinated by chakras. So the first concept we would bring in from a heat point of view is to go into the idea of 5 bodies and how each of the body is involved in pathogenesis. So in case of bipolar, we look at physical body, energy body, emotional body, mental and karmic, the 5 bodies, and we find out or we think about which body is involved in causing the pathology. So the first body is physical body, and the involvement of physical body is very low. Whatever we see in the physical body is more of a consequence rather than the cause for bipolar. We look at energy body, and the involvement of energy body is moderate and much of it is consequential. It can be used for healing. We will use it for healing, but it is not causal. It is more of giving relief and maintenance work rather than fundamental healing. Third body is the emotional body, and we see the involvement of emotional body is very high. And it is the cause of bipolar. One of the causes is resident in the emotional body. So it has a causal role to play in pathogenesis. Deeper we go, we find the mental body. Causal involvement is low. Whatever involvement we see is by and large consequential. The fifth body we encounter is the karmic body, and it is, according to heat, involved in the causality, and the involvement is high. The first four are very secular entities accepted by everybody. Last one involves an element of belief. So if you are not a believer, you can remove this part. The model will still work fine. But as the model is a believing model, it goes into the karmic body and it finds high. So emotional body and karmic body are where we have to focus upon. These are the vantage points from where we have to look at the difficulty. So once we know which are the vantage bodies, vantage points, what do you do about it? So the vantage points are the emotional body, the karmic body. Now what do you do about it? What is the healing plan for each of these bodies? For the emotional body, what is necessary is internalization of a good object. 1. 2. Affect healing, which involves affect expression and affect release. And 3. Relating to people, preferably in groups, social groups. So broadly, these three details in each of these three elements can be worked out based upon the individual. So this is broadly a healing plan for the emotional body, and then the karmic body. Spiritual practices which may involve meditation, observation, idol therapy, some other spiritual practices, they will be used for healing the karmic body. For healing,
so what is the meaning? What is the meaning of internalization of a good object?
In early childhood, if we see that the parents are good enough, we depend on the parents for our regulation. When the parents are present, we feel safe, we feel loved, protected, and so on. When the parents are absent, we find it difficult to regulate ourselves, and usually the anxiety mounts. We feel highly insecure. We don't feel safe, creative, loving, and playful. We go into a crisis in their absence, and their physical presence, we feel good. And that's one of the reasons you will see children keep crying to have the parents with them. Over a period of time, what happens is there is a psychological process by which the parents who are outside are taken in a psychological sense, and they are internalized. So that even when the physical parents are not there outside, internally we feel as though they are present inside of us, and therefore the security, the love, the regulation happens as though they were physically present outside. And this internalization of a good, reliable, stable object is one of the core requirements for good psychological and physical health. It is said even immune system is affected if you don't internalize a good, reliable, stable object. So if the good objects outside are not present for a long period of time, allowing us to internalize them, or objects which are present are not good enough, they are attacking objects, then we are not able to internalize good, reliable, stable object, and that is one of the core requirements for good psychological health. So that if it has not happened in childhood, then it happens in therapy, or it happens in good life experiences if you come across good people who are with you for a long period of time. So that is what we call internalization of a good object. The good object is instituted inside of us, so that that good object is then providing us with security, with love, with creativity, with regulation, and we feel sort of secure and rehabilitated with that good object. It is like parents are always, good parents are always present inside of us. So we don't have to worry about anything, and we can put our energies into more constructive outward activities. We are not fighting the dysregulation and the difficult catastrophic thinking and bad objects inside of us. Is it clear?
Yes, yes, sir, clear.
So it's a very subtle psychological process, very subtle. And this also happens in Indian spirituality when you spend a lot of time with an idol. That slowly and gradually you know about the idol. Every idol has a story. So we have two kinds of idols. One, idols of people who actually existed, and therefore we know the real story. And second, idols of gods who we have not seen as human beings, but about which we have stories and they have a personality. So idol therapy is a very deep and sophisticated therapy to help us internalize a good, reliable, stable object. Unfortunately, we have lost the science behind idol therapy, and therefore idol therapy has got reduced to idol worship. Most of it is just seeking something from God. But deeply speaking, along with its science, it's a very sophisticated therapy. Even today in Tantra, many people are knowledgeable about this whole science. There was a very good book, Agora at the Left Hand of God, in which in some short paragraphs, the author, Robert Soboda, has talked about 3 stages of idol therapy. In Sanskrit, the words are Tanmayata, Tadrupta, Lay, and Mukti. So first it is Tanmayata. You keep thinking about that object and you almost become obsessed with the object in a positive sense. Then you almost start getting identified with that object. And then you are lost yourself, and a strange kind of a state comes in when you don't feel you exist as a different self, what we call lay. It's a rare experience, it's not a common experience. And then slowly you start becoming free from that object, the idol, and that is where the visarjan comes in. You do visarjan, or you let go of the idol. So there is a complete cycle from creating an idol for a particular purpose, and based upon the purpose, the form, the personality of the idol and the ritual of the idol is constructed, to visarjan. It's a full cycle. In between is a transformation process. In therapy also it happens. In that safe environment, in that silent and calm environment, when you see a good supporting person for a long time, you internalize him as a good, reliable, stable object. So this is a very important process. Now to do this, I forgot one point. When we come to affect healing, there are many methods, and Reiki and pranic healing also are very powerful methods. You can have ISTDP also. You can have AUM of awareness, understanding and meditation, that kind of group meditation process also. You can have emotion specific workshop, for example, anger workshop, sadness workshop, where the entire day workshop focuses only on one emotion. It may be 1 day workshop, it may be 8-day retreat, but you can have affect specific workshops, or you can use pranic healing, Reiki. And pranic healing is a very powerful tool. I would suggest if anybody is interested in holistic healing, they can learn pranic healing. It's a very comprehensive system and a subtle system devised by Master Chua Kok Sui. So that can also be used very powerfully in holistic healing. I do it for my own healing and I get good results. I ask others also when I am tired or I have to sit to give me healing, and it works very well. So affect healing, we have many options. In karmic body healing, we have spiritual practices, we have social work, and we have donations for good causes. And many other spiritual practices are there, which are used to clean up the karmic body. One element that you find in pranic healing is what is called arahatic yoga for this. So this is how we would start looking at bipolar from a heat point of view, with the first step being trying to locate which bodies are involved in a causal way. Because every sickness, if it is chronic or strong, it will have some manifestation in all the 5 bodies. In Eastern philosophy, it is called sport. Sport meaning explosion, that event, any event inside the body actually is like an explosion, and the explosion throws out something in all the 5 bodies. But where the explosion happens, that body is very important, the causal body. And that is where we take the vantage point. So here we see in bipolar, the emotional and the karmic are very strongly involved causal bodies. In other bodies, especially energy body, we see moderate involvement, but consequential, not causal. So this is the first step we look at in heat. In terms of the 5 bodies, which bodies are involved more or less, in which bodies vantage point should be taken, and what should be the healing plan to heal those bodies. Three minutes to go, so I will send a new link.
Okay, sir.